The general has invited me. Actually, I have it written down. Friend, how fun. So I made all these prints. Sorry. But when I look at that, I also see my parents.
Vous avez un air merveilleux. Ah oui?
My parents are not alive for me to share this with them.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Talk Vietnam. Now, Catherine Karnow is an acclaimed American photographer who works for National Geographic, and she boasts a unique photo collection on General Nguyen Giap and his family members. She was the only Western journalist to accompany the general in his historic visit back to Dien Bien Phu in 1994. And she also embraces a certain special friendship that the family of the general has extended to her over the years. Now, in this edition of Talk Vietnam to commemorate the 60th year anniversary of the Dien Bien Phu victory, we're very lucky to have Catherine here in our program in order for her to share more about her stories of taking these photos, but above all, her memories of the great general.
Born and raised in Hong Kong, the daughter of American journalist Stanley Karnow, San Francisco-based photographer Catherine Karnow is known for her vibrant, emotional, and sensitive style of photographing people. Karnow has covered Australian Aborigines, Bombay film stars, victims of Agent Orange in Vietnam, Connecticut high society, and an Albanian farm family. In 1994, she was the only non-Vietnamese photojournalist to accompany General Giap on his historic first return to the forced encampment in the northern Vietnam highlands, from which he plotted the Battle of Dien Bien Phu. Karnow's work appears in National Geographic, National Geographic Traveler, Smithsonian, French and German GEO, and other international publications.
Thank you very much, Catherine,
Thank
for
you so
coming
much.
on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time. Can you share with us something that the audience and myself were very eager to know, is that how your relationship kind of began with the general as well as his family, how you came to know him?
Yeah. Well, my father was the acclaimed historian and journalist Stanley Karnow. And in 1990, he came to Vietnam to do an interview for the New York Times, to interview General Giap. That was in March of 1990. And I had been thinking about coming to Vietnam around that time. And so when I came in July of 1990, it was not difficult to get permission to meet with and to photograph the general and his family.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did your father ever tell you anything about Vietnam? Or did he pass on a certain kind of sense of interest in the country here?
Well, as a small child, I don't remember him sort of talking about Vietnam. He would go all the time, of course. But as I grew interested in Vietnam and came here as a photographer over all these years, my father was greatly interested, and we talked a lot, of course. And he, I mean, in later years, recent years, before he died, he said, you are carrying on my legacy.
Yes.
He was very proud
The
and very
legacy of
interested.
Vietnam.
And we shared that. We really shared that.
If I may go back to 1990, your very first visit with the great general, our national hero. Did you feel intimidated?
Well, of course I was nervous when I first visited, but quite quickly I was put at ease, both by his graciousness and his sort of politesse towards me, and also because his wife, Madame Dang Bi Kha, was so warm and jolly and welcoming. And I remember that she and I just started talking immediately. She was telling me about her love for dolphins and whales, and she asked me when I got home would I send her some videotapes of dolphins and whales. And I think she made it easy for me to be there then during that visit. Yeah.
In those visits, those social visits of the family, what was the ambience that he was giving you?
You know, when we got together, it was just social pleasantries. He would ask after my family, my parents, how is your father, how is your mother? We did not discuss military strategy. I mean, I was not a journalist interviewing him.
Yes.
Yeah, I was becoming a friend, I hope, and a photographer interested in capturing really, really good portraits and also photographing the family for them.
Yes.
Yeah.
During Catherine's visit to Vietnam this time, our crew have had the great privilege of following her into her very first destination here in Hanoi, and we'll see what that destination is in the following report.
Wow. So many photos, Catherine.
Yeah. So I made all these prints for the Giap family to bring to them. And
meeting with Catherine, I could sense the feelings of excitement and anxiety as she meticulously arranged the photos for the general's family. I could tell just how much this all meant to her.
I see some of these. This is from probably...
over here we have some of the older photographs taken in 1990, these portraits. You'll see these, and of course with his beautiful, lovely wife, Madame Bikha.
Yes.
I really love her.
Wow.
His grandchildren, when they were very, very little. We have from my visit to Dien Bien Phu.
1994,
1994. This section over here was taken last October during the funeral and, of course, the burial. I feel that it's almost a duty that I have an opportunity and a talent to be able to capture these moments and then give these prints to people, to the Giap family or other people in Vietnam, other people I have photographed, and give them pictures of them, so that they have something to remember, and especially in the digital age.
Exactly.
When we don't really make prints anymore.
Exactly. To have basically memories in the solid form.
Exactly. Hi. How are you? So good to see you. Hi. Nice to see you. Hi.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
You just came yesterday?
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much.
At first, we go to burn incense for my father. Okay? Let's put shoes off. I have so many memories over so many years. The house looks and feels just the same from the outside, but it's different. Something feels different. There's a sense of quiet, of emptiness, of loss. We look back on these happier times, and here's a man who brought independence to Vietnam, a hero in this country. And yet, obviously, he's also somebody's father, somebody's grandfather, somebody's great-grandfather.
Very human side of him
Yeah.
as well.
So when I look at this picture, I just feel so proud that I had the opportunity to spend time with him, with his family, witnessing history. But when I look at that, I also see my parents. I mean, my father also was a very eminent historian who changed the way America looked at Vietnam.
Exactly.
But to me, he was just my daddy.
He was your dad.
Mọi người trong nhà ấy thì từ lúc ông còn sống cũng như khi ông mất ấy, thì cũng giống ông và bà coi cô ấy là như người thân trong gia đình. Cả bố cô ấy, cả cô ấy là tiếng Pháp cũng rất là giỏi. Thế thì thường đến gặp ông bà thì toàn nói chuyện tiếng Pháp. Thế mà cũng cảm thấy cô có cái gần gũi cũng như là người Việt Nam mình ấy. 1994.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's her.
Yeah.
And I didn't remember we took this.
Yeah, well, I dug these up. Vous avez un air merveilleux.
Ah oui?
Très, très, très vivante.
Merci beaucoup. Con đây hả?
Each time you're in Vietnam, you always visit General Giap's family. So what is the ambience and the feelings that they have extended to you over the years as a family friend?
Yeah, it's very special to me to be with them for so many different reasons. I mean, at this point, we've experienced so many special things together. I mean, coming and visiting them this time, following on my last trip, which was to attend the funeral and the burial and be with them for those few days, I think that brought us closer. And also, my own family used to be larger with my parents still alive, and we always had raucous, fun times together, my own family, around the dinner table. And so when I'm with the Giap family, which is a very large, extended family with grandchildren and great-grandchildren, it's wonderful to be with them and experience a large family together with them. Yeah.
In the house, we went through kind of the different areas that you had taken the photos. This very unique photo collection, living memories in solid form in the photos themselves. What would you say are some of your favorite photos of the general himself or of his family?
Well, I probably am the most proud of the photograph that depicts him as the quote-unquote snow-covered volcano.
Yes, we have it right here. So the snow covered the white hair, but on inside this fiery temperament.
Explosive.
Exactly.
He did not explode with me, but
It's still very calm at the same time.
And I think you can see the intensity of his mind in the expression in his eyes.
Yes. And, you know, in this trip, I was very fortunate to follow your steps, actually, to visit the family of General Giap and go back to the house where we saw again the spot where you took this very photo. So can you share with us that moment of finding that very location again?
Well, I can recount the story of how that photograph came to happen, which is that we were sitting and having tea, but I was getting a little bit nervous, a little anxious about where and how was I going to do this portrait, because it was quite dark and I knew that I needed good natural light. And I was sort of starting to look around where was good natural light. It wasn't where we were, and so I asked if I could just sort of look around a bit.
Yes.
And wandered through the kitchen and saw that there was this sort of shaft of light coming down on the stairs. And that's where we did that shot.
Yes.
And this time going back, even though I have been back to the house many times since 1990, I thought maybe they just remodeled, it wasn't there anymore, I didn't notice the stairwell. But this time, we looked for it, and there it was, that exact same stairway. Yes. And to sit on those stairs, you know, I was at the time, 1990, I was above, and I was above, and he was below, because the light had to shine down on him. Yes. And I sat back down on that same stair.
Yes, to, you know, stand there and relive that memory again must have been very special.
Yes, yes.
Exactly. Now, at the funeral of General Nguyen Giap, we could see in the crowd many of the photos that were being held up by the people standing on the street side, holding up. That was actually the photographs that Catherine took of the general. And one particular photo inspired a man who lived in Dong Nai, particularly Bien Hoa City, and from that one photo, he was able to create this mosaic from 8,800 pieces of smaller photos and creating a very grand portrait of the general himself. And we'll get to meet this artist in the following.
I came out to Bien Hoa today to meet the artist, Nguyen, who created the mosaic photograph, the composite of 8,800 small photographs based on my photograph of General Giap. It was absolutely wonderful to finally meet the artist who had created this beautiful mosaic that I consider to be a collaboration between his work and my work.
The 60-kilometer trip to Bien Hoa City took Catherine an hour and a half. Receiving her with a bouquet of flowers is a man she only knows by name, artist Nguyen. Minh compiled a photo mosaic of late President Ho Chi Minh and General Nguyen Giap and used one of the photos Catherine took. Minh says that Catherine's photo is his favorite.
Tôi là một người làm công việc về mỹ thuật. Thì làm một cái chân dung thì mình sẽ buộc lòng phải suy nghĩ về cái hình tượng. Thì chính vì cái chỗ là có lẽ là chị ấy với mình nó cùng một cái suy nghĩ giống nhau gì đó. Nên cuối cùng cái tác phẩm mình kết hợp giữa cái công việc của mình làm và cái chân dung chị ấy chụp thì nó tạo nên được cái chân dung đại tướng mà hiện nay tôi rất là cảm thấy hài lòng nhất, và đó là trong những cái chân dung đẹp nhất mà tôi làm.
Minh spent 16 months to collect 8,800 photos of General Giap on the internet, books, newspapers, and documentaries, put them together to form the final portrait. The biggest photo that Minh uses was shot and copyrighted by Catherine, but the American photographer, with a great respect for General Giap, allows him to use it for free.
To me, the honor of having my photograph used is greater than any sort of feeling of being disturbed that my picture was taken, or It actually doesn't. It's more of an honor, and I might be mispronouncing this, but this Nguyen. These kinds of experiences are what makes this country magical and beautiful for me.
For Ming, with gratitude and warm wishes, was the message Catherine wrote on the photos she presented to Ming as goodbye gifts. Having never met each other before, a bond of respect and warmth has been born. Their meeting came to an end after a few hours, but these artists know they will see each other again, and they know for sure that love for General Nguyen Giap is a thread that connects their souls, even though they are thousands of miles apart.
How did you feel upon first seeing that mosaic that was made basically upon your photo?
I believe the big mosaic was delivered to the house in, I think it was November of 2010.
Yes.
And I came the next day just for a social visit. And they said, look what came yesterday.
Okay.
And it was the first time that I saw this. It was extraordinary. Yeah. And that photograph that I took, that he based it on, was taken in 1994. I remember because I just went over for a social visit, and Madame Bichat said, would you do a photograph for us?
Really?
We would like just a photograph for us. Just, you know, a sort of a nice portrait. And I said, of course, with pleasure. So this was just for them. And little did I know that over the years, that photograph would end up being on the cover of various books, both about and by General Giap. And then at the time of the funeral, that, you know, hundreds of people would be holding up that very photograph.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's great. Let's talk about the invitation that General Nguyen Giap extended to you to come to Điện Biên Phủ. How did that happen?
I just can't remember. But for some reason, I happened to be in Vietnam in April of 1994. And I went for a social visit, and we were just having tea and talking. And he leaned over. We were sitting next to each other. And he leaned over and very quietly, he said to me in French, because we spoke in French, he said, would you consider accompanying me to Dien Bien Phu? We're going to go in a couple days.
Wow.
And I was immediately just like, wow, oh my God, this is huge. And I said, I would be honored. I would love to come. He said, okay, you'll come, we'll take care of you. And when I left there, I remember that I believe I called my father, or maybe I sent him a fax.
Yes.
And I said, I'm going to Dien Bien Phu. The general has invited me. It's a private trip. I'm going with him. No one, because the general also, at the time that he extended that invitation, he said, don't tell anybody.
Yes.
And then my father was so excited, of course.
Yes, of course.
And off we went.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, 20 years have passed since Catherine accompanied General Nguyen Giap on that historic visit back in 1994. But the memories still are very fresh with Catherine. And during this trip, she was able to revisit Điện Biên Phủ city as well as Mường Phăng. And we were very lucky enough to follow her steps. And we'll see exactly how she has relived these memories of not only accompanying the general, but also the memories of 1954, the victory itself, in the following.
I remember coming here in 1994 when it took hours to reach Mường Phăng from Dien Bien Phu over narrow, bumpy, curvy roads. When we arrived, the field was already filled with hundreds of people waiting for the general to arrive. Villagers stood in small groups, and children with flags waited in the sun. We waited and we waited To pass the time, I photographed them as well as the ethnic tribal minorities. Finally, the helicopter, the great bird, swooped down from the sky. The people shouted and waved, and as the blades came to a stop, we all stood in silence as the general descended. The local people were so happy to see him, and his own joy was evident as he and his family greeted the villagers. Some he had not seen in 40 years. Clearly, the bonds with these people were so important to him. When we were here in '94, this really was the jungle. You know, a narrow little path. Now it's sort of almost paved, and but what's different now is just seeing the sheer number of tourists all coming. Now this, you know, I think this is one of the bridges that maybe is in this photograph that I'll show you.
Yes. It was the same bridge where the general himself crossed.
Maybe. Let's see if I can see this shot here. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it could be. I mean, I was very impressed that the general in his early 80s was so agile, coming, you know, all the way up the path, which was not, it was not so well, wasn't paved like this. It was really just a jungle path. Mm-hmm. And he was very impressed by the forest and the trees. You know, he had a lot of respect for nature.
Yes.
And I remember he thanked the villagers for preserving the forest.
He thanked the villagers. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he had this eye out for the little details, and also
yes,
just nature in general.
This is the hut where they planned the strategy, the military strategy for Dien Bien Phu. When I came here in 1994 with the general, we walked into this hut, and there was, I remember there was a map. Actually, I have a photograph here that I'll show you that I took at the time. And this photograph, you can see there's this large map that they put on the wall, and this is exactly the scene at the time. And afterwards I asked, what was he saying? Actually, I have it written down.
Yes.
Because I took these notes, these prolific notes, at the very time I was shooting and I was writing.
Are these the same exact notes that you took?
These are the exact
same
notes.
Pieces of paper.
Yeah.
This is from 20 years ago. That's amazing.
So I did this diagram because I wanted to know who everybody was.
Yes. So if
And
I just hold this up here.
yeah, so you can see that this is General Giap, of course, and here, this gentleman was Nguyen. He was the chief of the office of the Ministry of Defense, and he was here during Dien Bien Phu. And then he sort of became my friend, Cao Fa.
Yes, he's your correspondent.
He looked after me during the whole visit. He was the vice chief of military intelligence.
Exactly.
So, as I was saying, I asked him afterwards, I said, so what did the general say? What was he saying? I wrote my notes in French. Je fais ce que j'ai fait il y a 4 ans. In other words, I am doing right now what I was doing 40 years ago. My only regret now is that some of those people who were with me at the time, my staff, are no longer alive to be here with me now.
So in this trip back to Mường Phăng and Dien Bien Phu, did you meet any of the people who might have been there back in 1994 during your first visit?
Yeah. In '94, I had photographed the general with a man named Mr. Bong.
Yes.
And sadly, he just passed away, I believe, about a year ago. But we were able to meet his wife at her home and to pay respects at the altar in her home. And I spent a few minutes photographing her. These pictures were very moving to me. I learned through translation that she was very sad, and in her eyes you could see tears in her eyes and sadness in her eyes. So that was quite moving. And then later we were able to meet Mr. Bong's sister.
Yes.
Also now very old woman, of course,
Yes.
but lovely.
Yes.
And she had a photograph taken of herself with the general. It was taken actually in 2014. Excuse me, it was taken in 2004.
2004.
Yes.
During his next visit.
Yes. But it was very moving to be able to meet those two women. Yeah.
It is hard to imagine that this now busy northwestern city was once the heart of a fierce battle zone, the backdrop to the historic Điện Biên Phủ victory. Since General Giap's passing in October 2013, this would be the first time the late general's family, including his grandchildren and great-grandchildren, visit the area. The general's granddaughter Ngọc Anh was only 13 when she last accompanied him here in 1994.
Bây giờ quay lại đây thì ông không có còn ở bên cạnh chúng ta nữa. Nhưng mà như con mình nói là ông vẫn ở trên trời và ông đã bay đến đây. Và ông cũng đã biết những chuyện ở đây rồi, chuyện xảy ra ở đây rồi, thì cái cảm giác mà quay lại đây là rất là nhớ ông.
Yet, this visit is not only about reliving history, it's an inspiration for future generations.
Chúng tôi đưa các cháu nhỏ đến và các muốn là cũng truyền lại những cái tinh thần mà ba mẹ chúng tôi đã giáo dục cho các con. Thì các cháu cũng rất là háo hức và phấn khởi. Đây là cái đợt cũng khó mà có một lần thứ hai trong đời. Đó là nhân dịp chiến thắng 60 năm Điện Biên Phủ.
12-year-old Phong is one of the younger grandchildren.
Em vô cùng tự hào về những chiến công mà cả dân tộc làm được. Trong đó ông mình là người tổng chỉ huy. Em cũng muốn học tập ông để sau này đóng góp lớn cho đất nước, để không phụ lòng mong mỏi của ông đối với em.
For the younger generation of General Giap's family, such visits have been a chance not only to relive their forefathers' legacy, but also to gain a deeper appreciation for the peace and prosperity that they now enjoy, fueling a stronger sense of motivation for the future.
How does it feel being back here now, 20 years after that historic visit, accompanying the general? And this time, you know, he's no longer here with us. You're going along with the family. What feelings did it bring to you?
To return there with the family was extremely special. And to watch Dien Bien teach the children about, talk a little bit about the strategy and to, teach them about what was going on. And then I had an opportunity this time after the family sort of went down and were relaxing at the tables just below the hut. And Dien Bien stayed back. And I had a few moments to do a portrait of him.
Yes.
Alone, he was alone. And just the red roses that they had brought to honor were on the table. And it was very quiet. And I took some photographs of him as he was in thought, and some where he was looking in the camera. And we kept it quiet. But later I said to him, "What were you feeling when I did those portraits?" Yes. And he said, "I was feeling the presence of my father." In other words, he was really feeling the spiritual presence of his father.
On October 4, 2013, Catherine received the news that the general had passed, and without hesitation, she went on the first possible flight in order to be here in Vietnam with the family. And as a photographer, though, she witnessed some of the most emotional moments of the people coming out to pay their respects to the general. And in the following, we'll get a chance to relive some of those moments.
I was very emotional at that point. So much was happening at the same time. The history of my relations with General Giap and his family began from my father. I felt deeply the loss that General Giap's family and the country felt upon his passing away, not only because of the feelings I have for them, but also because I too had recently lost my father. I wished my father had been alive so that I could share this experience with him.
Catherine, if I may ask, how was the moment, that defining moment that you learned of the news that the general had passed?
A close family friend wrote me an email immediately when he found out, and he said, General Giap just died. My first emotion was sadness for the family, and then I thought, I have to go to Vietnam immediately.
Yes. Witnessing the days running up to the funeral, and you were one of the few journalists to accompany the family on that last day of the funeral, but in the days running up to then, photographing the people coming out to the house, showing their respects, bidding their farewells to the great general. What was your feelings?
As soon as I arrived, as soon as I left my bags at the hotel, I went straight to the house. And it was already late afternoon, getting towards dusk. And it was very sort of reverent and silent and beautiful. And the line of people to move up the driveway and into where the altar was, I mean, that line started way, way, way out, blocks and blocks away, as people moved slowly and carefully up towards the altar. And there was such a feeling of reverence. And then I photographed them, and many of them were holding the portraits, of course. For me, I had lost my father just a few months earlier, and so, you know, he would have been so proud and so interested to know of my visit. So, you know, I'm so honored that I was able to cover this, but my only regret is that my parents are not alive for me to share this with them.
Yes. I believe they would be very proud of you, from heaven. it would be.
Yes, yes.
Do you think, how do you think the fact that you were such a close friend of the family and had this closeness to the general, how do you think that impacts or how is it significant in your overall relationship with the country, Vietnam?
You know, I don't really know why I'm so passionate about this country. I mean, of course, it's a beautiful country geographically. I love the food. I love the old quarter in Hanoi. Every time I come here is something new and different. But there's something about the Vietnamese people that I feel a rapport and a kinship with. I mean, the Vietnamese people are very hardworking. They're intelligent. They are tenacious. They believe strongly in family. They have a good sense of humor.
Yes.
They're nostalgic. And the Giap family is all of these things. And that resonates with me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Catherine,
much. It's been a
for being
great
here.
pleasure. Thank you.
It's been a touching and emotional experience for me as well, being able to accompany you in this trip and seeing the wonderful love and connection that the family has extended to you, but also reliving these moments that I, as a young Vietnamese, and I'm sure many of the audience watching would not have known about had it not been for such photographer as yourself, recapturing such moment and retelling right now on this show these stories. So thank you.
Thank you. It's been a great honor. Thank you.
And that wraps up our edition of Talk Vietnam this time. We hope that it has helped you to relive some of the memories of our great national war hero, General Nguyen Giap, and that it has also made you, as it has made me, cherish more the victory that has helped our country to be peaceful it is today, all thanks to our great leaders and the fallen soldiers who have sacrificed their life for what we have today. Thank you very much for joining us on Talk Vietnam this time, and we'll see you more next time.